everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time. I have another really special guest to introduce to you. Her name is Melissa Harris, and Melissa has a company called WYSHBONE with a Y, and it was born out of a passion to help others thrive after major life events, focusing on transition and loss. And she's a certified professional coactive coach through Coactive Training Institute and associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. And her specialty is working with individuals who have experienced a major life event, which could be a job loss or a divorce or the death of a loved one. And it's about contemplating where they are now and what to do next. And I love that because that's exactly what we need to know after we've gone through this traumatic occurrence. Then what, right? So welcome to the podcast and thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Angela. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
For sure. And so, we were just talking a little bit before we started, and we were talking about, that wake-up call.
Yeah.
that so many of us get. And so tell us a little bit about yours.
Yeah. That wake-up call piece is so interesting because it seems like it can happen to people for all sorts of reasons. And it doesn't always have to be like, the story that I had and I think it's sometimes as what would be considered a wake-up call, and I'm using like air quotes, is not like people don't always know what's happening to them. Like, it's just things start to feel very disorienting and confusing. And it just feels like maybe you're in a place that you've never been before. And so it can be quite disruptive, but it's also like, not everybody is like, what's happening? And it usually takes kind of like once you've come through it and you're out of it, that you look back and you're like, I see what was happening there. But in the midst of it, it's very confusing. And my wake up call happened it's about 6 years ago now, where it was the death of two people that were my two most important, closest people. And they were my parents. Death is always a bit shocking, I believe, for most people. But I think I was so ill prepared up until that stage of my life. And I think maybe that's because of the way my family dealt with death. Maybe that was a societal thing. I'm sure it was just all the sorts of different kinds of conditioning that happened. Maybe it's kind of sometimes the way the Western culture deals with death too. We just all have different ways that we've been brought up about it. And I was pretty ill prepared. So I think because of that, it just sent me on a spiral, and it got worse before it got better. And then it got real curious, and it made me see that I wasn't living. It woke me up to myself. That's probably the simplest way to say it. And that sounds so like ethereal. Like, how do you wake up to yourself? Like, what do you mean? Like, what is that? But I think, I don't know if it's okay to talk in terms of souls. Like we have like a body and then we have like a soul or a spirit. Is that okay? So I think it's like that. It's like, there's this part of us inside, like our soul or our higher self, like our, that, I don't know. I think we're born with it very much alive, and then we get conditioned, and and then we kind of get, I imagine it like we are born as this light, and then we kind of become more dense. Like coming to this planet almost makes us a little bit more dense, and we just get conditioned. And sometimes that authenticity, that trueness, that aliveness, that part of us that is just who it gets just dense. And I think sometimes these moments in life, these major life events, like just smack us like a little bit, like you get like a smack across the face, like your soul gets like a smack up or like a charge or like a bolt or like something. And I think for those of us that are listening, because I think sometimes some of us get like a few of them And then we like don't listen, and maybe then we don't but then we get one that we're like, okay, I'm here, I'm listening. And I think that's kind of what that was for me. I think there were a few leading up to it, but that was a biggie, and it happened in a short amount of time, and it was like one and then the next, and I had to listen. It woke me up to a degree that I had to stop and listen, and that stopping and listening had me looking around at my life, and I just realized it was completely misaligned. And so, and then I didn't really know what to do. So I hired somebody to help me. I went to guide a source, somebody that could help pull me through that confusion and work with me. Cause I knew I had a lot of work inner work to do. But then from that inner work, I was like, I need to get into action somehow too. Like there's somehow I need to do the inner work, but then lay the groundwork out of like, if everything's not the same anymore, if I've completely woken up to a life that doesn't feel like it's what I should be doing any longer, then I need to figure out how to like change that. And I needed help. So I sought out help. I'm not saying that that's for everybody, but that was the path I chose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I truly believe, when I first started out, I thought when I dealt with grief that you did it on your own. It was like a personal thing that you did, right? You figured it out. But after a certain amount of time, I realized that I wasn't being very successful that way. Whatever tools I had weren't enough. And so I was the same as you. I ended up having to reach out. I found a grief coach, which I didn't know existed at the time. I didn't know that there was even such a thing as a grief coach. Yeah.
I know.
It's important, I think. Yeah. To have
I think a lot of people aren't aware of what support is out there in the world for them. And depending on the preference of how you like to be in the world, if you like that one-on-one attention, or if you like groups, like grief groups, but just to be in the room with others that are in your same place, walking the same, having like all your hearts are breaking in the same way, or maybe they're not exactly the same, but it's like, wow, I'm not crazy. Do you feel crazy? Like, I feel like, this is happening. Does this happen to any of you? And, and like you said, or a coach who has some experience it, that they can affirm for you and walk right beside you every step of the way, holding your hand, because it's like, you need that,
Yeah.
It was so smart of you. How wise of you to seek that out for yourself.
Oh, it was necessary. And, I started to trust my own instincts when I trusted my gut. Like, I seen the quote on Facebook. I looked at it. I kind of knew I believed in that, and then I just called her up. They usually have a discovery call. I did the discovery call. And as soon as the call was over, I knew what I needed to do. I was scared to death too at this time. And scared of crying, scared of, bearing my soul to somebody I don't even know.
Yeah.
But I think it really made a huge difference for me.
Yeah. And now that you've been through that, through that experience, how do you feel now about that journey with a stranger? Essentially, at first, it started out as a stranger or somebody you didn't know.
Right.
And what was the experience of being that vulnerable with someone?
Well, we became really good friends.
Yeah.
She became like a sister almost for that time span that we were together. And we still contact each other off and on because we're in this, kind of in the same world. But it's just interesting how I thought, that I could do this on my own. I would be able to figure this out on my own, and I just couldn't. And, building a community around me, doing the work that I do, and I think you can probably relate to this. You get support from that too. It's not only you're supporting them, but they're supporting you, and it's all happening simultaneously.
No, I know, that's so true, isn't it? Doesn't it feel like as you're always doing your own work, as you're working with others? It's like, I think that's I remember the day that revelation came to me. I was, it was early on, and when I was kind of a younger coach, where I was like, oh, this is I'm always going to be doing my work alongside everybody that I come in contact with. Like it's never ending. It's always going to be, growth, expansion, just till the end of the days.
And do you find that the clients that come to you are often pointing to you things that you need to work on as well,
Sometimes.
maybe even in a deeper way, but yes.
Yes. Yeah. It's like sometimes you close down those sessions and those calls and you walk away and it's like my higher self is just yip yapping. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you can just feel it. You're like, yeah, that's true. And I think there's something really important and beautiful about that relationship with someone that isn't a friend, a family member, somebody that is in your community that knows you in and out. It's like there is an ability to see things in you. Like she was probably able to see things, major blind spots that you have, like, that a friend, a family member, anybody else would just jump in with their opinion or
Right.
just jump in with what they think is best for you, or just jump in, something that's like some of the most sacred part, I think, of that relationship between coach and client is that they don't have stake in the game for, like, you only want the outcome for you is to find what it is you came to coaching for, but they don't have all this like story
Yeah.
of you.
Mm-hmm.
They just have you. So they see you in such a different way.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I think that's so important and part of that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you can talk about things then that if you're struggling with a family member, you can't be talking to family about family like
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
work, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like that confidentiality in that sacred space is I think like the key, the biggest part of that key, how that success of that growth and that progress can happen is just a safe space. You
Yeah,
need that safe space. Yeah. And
absolutely.
that's the beauty of it. I mean, that's why I love this work so much too. I don't know how you feel, but that's almost like in the top three of like why I love this work. And, I just will do it till the end of time. I know I will, because it feeds in such a way.
Mhm. Yeah. And the ripple effect of what you do. I think about my coach and how she helped me, and then I was able to help other people. And then now they're growing and expanding and doing amazing things as well. And it's just exponential,
And
you know?
it is. I mean, our planet is so populated. And it's like, to me, that's the only time when I can think of it in the way that you just said it, is like, then I remove the overwhelm for
Yeah.
myself, because I'm like, okay. Because, you think of the whole and everything, and then it's like, what can I do? It feels so overwhelming. But then you zoom, it's like you zoom in and you're like, okay, this is how we can all help each other. And it's like that singular, smaller ripple of impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, so
Yeah. And
important.
it's like people, when they're watching you right now, and listening to you, as some of them are going to get this, I really like her. I like what she's saying. I could
Mhm.
really connect with her. And I encourage people to trust that, because that's what I did. And I'm sure that's what you did.
Yeah,
It's like knowing inside that this is something that could really help me. And then just taking that step, as scary as it feels,
yeah,
do it, because it makes a world of difference. I
it
always
does.
wondered, what can a coach say? I mean, my husband's dead. How is she going to bring him back? She can't do anything, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I had,
yeah. It's like, you're like, what I really need is that, and that she can't do that. So what's
yeah,
she gonna do? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. What's
yeah,
she going to say that's going to make this better? Right. Well, there's
yeah,
a whole lot that can be done to make it better. And, that's the hope in all of it.
yeah. And I think really meeting people where they're at, because everybody is different and what they need and when they need it. You know a lot about this, but for those who know anything about grief, like that grief is but one container of like 10 different emotions.
Mhm.
So and they're sometimes happening simultaneously, or sometimes they're happening in one order, and then they're out of order, and it's just, there's days you don't know who you are. What's my name, where am I, like it's like you almost have to ground into your moment of, and so that's overwhelming enough. And so I think a really, this feeling scared, like you said, you're like, I was so scared, but it's like having the trust in, like, okay, they're the expert, just take a chance, because it could, the ones that are really skilled in this space, it's like they'll know how to meet you exactly where you're at, so it'll feel so nurturing, and then lo and behold, maybe at some point there's going to be a little nudge that you could use, a little nudge over here, or maybe not, maybe today, and maybe less of a nudge. That dance that is really emotional
Mhm.
is so, I think anybody in that space, and that you said that the discovery call, it's for you walked away and you're like, I knew how I felt. And I think
Mhm.
there's a lot you can garner and gather in that discovery call with people, with professionals,
Absolutely.
which is
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
important.
for sure. There's a quote from, I think I must have took, I don't know where they took this from, but it says, loss in any form can be devastating. It can make you question everything. But when you are ready and with the appropriate support, you can turn the loss into thoughtful transition that can serve yourself in ways you may not have even imagined. Like, this is from your,
That's my website. Yeah, from my website.
yeah, from your website.
Yeah.
I just thought, wow, that into a thoughtful transition that can save yourself in ways you may not have even imagined. I think that's what we're talking about here, is that
Mm.
transition. Yeah.
It's so, the two of us have been talking about bereavement, because these are our stories,
Yeah.
and loss happens in various ways in our lives, not just from bereavement. And I
Mm.
think that when major life events happen, there is that grounding piece that sometimes happens in any of the cases is grief. Like, you're grief. I know you get this, because I think this is some of what I've read about your background too, is like this, there's loss that's happening around us all the time in our lives. And
Mm.
it will continue to happen in our life. Loss of a job, loss of a friend, loss of a relationship, your children go off to empty nesting, and then there's more personal type losses, like you that are more identity related. People go into retirement and their whole world was like, everything that they were was this career they had built, and they just, it's like now without it. Or I work with people that have come through addiction, or are in like the recovery space, and there is a lot of grieving of a past self. So there's like, so this transition, so I think I'm trying to bring it full circle back to that, like, transition piece, is that you have to go through some processes and some processing after something major happens, and it's walking that transition that helps you get through on the other side of it, a super resonant, aligned outcome. Because sometimes people are forever changed after that death, that illness, that recovery. They're like, I don't know what it is about what just happened, but I don't think I'm the same. And I mean, I can go into why I think that is, but there is something that happens to a lot of people. There's a shift. I think the funny thing that people sometimes are just like, midlife crisis, ha ha ha. Like, there's this thing that happens to some people when they've gone through, they reach a certain age. Maybe something major didn't happen, but they reach a certain age. And so I think that piece, we're not taught how to maneuver and kind of go through these transitions in life that are so soul disorienting, like, or soul orienting, whichever's happened, you feel off and you're trying to become aligned again. Like, we know people are like, oh, you're going through a transition, you're moving, you're going here, here's how you do it step by step. This is how you go from, but when it comes to the matters of the soul, it's complicated.
Mm.
It's so, and it takes, I think, just a tender touch to get to the other side of that, and that make sure that transition isn't just like, okay, we're good, we're walking away, like everything's good here. It's like, no, wait a minute. It's like, this is what just happened is major. It's life altering. You're never the same. So it has to be treated in a way that is, not only just precious, but like, there's some nuggets that you're going to get out of this that maybe will show you that the first so over many years up until this moment aren't, could be better, or could be richer, or could be more vibrant, sometimes. And so taking a look at like every aspect of your life, even though that's not really why people came to this process at first, you end up kind of taking a look at everything, because it's all connected, because it's like our soul is connected to like all the physical like it becomes like health and so many different things. I feel like I might be getting off on a little bit of a tangent.
No, no, and it is big and it does get complex. And like you say, everything's related to everything. And things keep coming up.
Yeah, they do.
Even now. And I would consider myself, I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of work, but I still, things come up from my childhood, or things come up that, are related to what I'm doing now. And once you kind of get into that groove of that happening, you start to realize, oh, so here we go. I've got some healing to do. There's going to be some growth. I might need some help. I might need some support, or I might be able to get through this on my own. I don't know yet, but it's like that. So how do you work with your clients? Like, if I was your client and I was coming to you, let's see if we can make people comfortable with this process.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's such a good question. It's a very important question, because it's vague, and it's like, oh, this is, how does this work? Well, if clients are coming to me and they're interested in working one-on-one, what I usually suggest is a commitment of 3 to 6 months. Not that they have to know that in the beginning, because they may not, but that's just usually at least 3 months gets you a little bit of like, okay, gets the process going. Any shorter than that, it starts to feel like it just doesn't start to, the moment you start to feel a momentum, and then it's like, oh, we're done. So what happens is they walk in and we work together to take a really, really deep inventory of what happened. Like, what happened, where are your values, what are your goals, so many things about like background leading up to this, and essentially a life inventory of, and then what they want to work on. So that's setting the stage for that. And then depending on each person, there's a lot of processing and letting go and releasing, and that type of work that can tend to happen. And what I found is I like to move into that phase next, but I really want to remind people it's a very co-created experience. So what I might have as a loose guideline and some suggestions, we're working together. So people, they have agency over this process. I don't ever want people to feel like, gosh, it's very much like, how'd that feel for you? How is this today? A lot of checking in, and then depending on how long that's needed for people, because everybody's different in how much or little they have to kind of go through because if there is a lot of grieving, like say, bereavement versus a career change feels different, that feels different. And you can imagine, for obvious reasons. And so then it's like, I like to go into this, like what I call like this big picture, this big dream portion of the work together, where it's like, imagine imagine the biggest, most beautiful outcome and way of living that you ever have. If there were no constraints, Like there wasn't people or family members or money or anybody like that were telling you this is just you. And it really, and that work, oddly enough, you really have to like work with people on that. And I mean like a trainer would sometimes in a way that like, are you sure that's the biggest dream? Like really, because I think people are like, yep, that's it for me. Yep, I just want to have a job that, has me working these many hours. But it's like, no, this is the time and space we get to go big. Like nobody's holding you back. And so that allows not only a little bit of play, but it allows the creativity that just people aren't often asked about, to be honest. I think that sometimes people are just like, and so we kind of reverse engineer things around some of the nuggets that come out of that work. And then a lot of it coming out of that, because once you go through that, sometimes people are like, whoa. So I didn't even know that I would say that, or I've surprised myself, or so then we take some of those like, reactions and answers, and we deeply explore them. And from there, it's like, now we're starting to create a path and building a path. And when that starts to happen, that's when you start to get resistances, and we have to create new habits, because you can't do things the way you used to before. Like this is where you have to be open to newness and open to new ways. And so that becomes the real mindset inner work time. And then it's just all about mapping it out, getting it into action, having accountability, making sure. So that's like a real rough, breakdown.
Yeah.
But that can be 3 months for some, 6 to 9 months for others. Some people will take a year. Everyone has their own time. And so and then I do group work, and I do workshops and facilitation where I'm teaching, and I'm in, virtual rooms or in-person rooms where we're doing workshops. And that's a lot of just real, either grief group related, or I'm going to like public service places doing workshops where it's like, okay, let's get into how to manifest better, and how to set yourself up for, real kind of life habit forming type tools and things for life, and how to live more vibrantly and erratically. So those are kind of the two different ways I work with people. It's like the one-on-one or the group facilitation.
Yeah. And like you said, some people like the one-on-one. I was kind of a one-on-one person.
Yeah.
So, I have a support group, and that's super effective too.
It is.
Just, sharing each other's stories and sharing resources can be effective. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think I have this. I wish we lived closer. I would invite, well, if you're ever in the Los Angeles area, I do a monthly hiking event. I call it the Hike and Heal, because it's all about healing. And we just, whoever's able to, it's the third Saturday of every month. And I go to this very specific hike in Los Angeles that I love. And we set intentions, and we have a kind of a heart connection moment right before we get started, and make introductions, because it's usually a group of 3 to 10. And we hike, and then we come back and we lock it all in with a grief circle. But it's sometimes it's just, and I just usually do some sort of tool that I do in my grief groups, something simple, because we only have a limited amount of time, and it just give a little bit of like sharing, and then everyone's off on their way. And it's like a free event that I do here. And it's just so beautiful to see people come together, and you get to connect people. The goal is just to get them all to connect with each other, so that they can stay in touch, because it's like that support thing you're talking about with community. It's like build community, so that you guys have each other's backs in this grief space.
Yeah.
It's like
Beautiful.
have someone.
And powerful, because you're setting an intention, and then you're going for a walk, and you're moving energy, and you're sharing with others. And so there's a lot of stuff that's happening in that. I can see that's in that opportunity. So that's wonderful. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, they can email me directly at melissa@wishbonewellness.com. And like you said, Wishbone is spelled WYSHBONE. So the Y looks like a wishbone. That's why I did that. And then my website is wishbonewellness.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook, wishbone_wellness. So it's all pretty easy to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. And yeah, I have those. If you're local in the Los Angeles area, I have free hiking events. And then I do tons of virtual and in-person workshops. So open for facilitation if people are out there and they're looking to bring workshop facilitation into their workplaces or into their community centers, things like that, churches. So that's the best way to find me.
Wow. Okay. Well, fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you for bringing this to the world, bringing your podcast to the world. That's what I'd love to add. I mean, this is the light. This is the light work that we need out there in the world. So, Angela, thank you so much for bringing this platform. I really feel honored to be here.
It has been an absolute delight meeting you. Thank you again for taking the time. And thank you, everybody, for watching, and have a great day.